Hello, my name is Nadine and welcome to Hop Along Studio. So on my website this week, I was writing about how to find meaningful connection during COVID-19. As I've been talking with people over the week, it sounds like there's been a bit more pressure this week as we're all trying to adjust to this new normal. Now that kids have been out of school for a few weeks, I know a lot of schools are trying to do some online courses, and parents are often still in positions where they have to work from home. It's hard to find that balance in everything, juggling, having to deal with children, having to still deal with the work pressures and everything else that's going on, not to mention social distancing and self-isolating in some situations as well. I know for myself, I usually work from home and that's okay, but it's been one of those things it's been getting harder. I find just not being able to go for my walks or having to be really careful going for walks outside to make sure that I am doing some proper social distancing. The things that I usually do for enjoyment, I really can't do right now. And considering it is still snowy outside, that makes it really hard when you really can't even go out into your yard and your garden to be able to enjoy the weather at all. So how do we build meaningful connection and trust during this time? It's easier said than done. So many of us have been in a situation where we have maybe not spent that much time with our family members. It's so busy to be busy with a schedule and commitments and things going on that it can be maybe difficult reconnecting again as a couple or as a family. It's always nice to say, oh, I trust everyone and they know me really well. But in a sense, if we've fallen into bad habits and we haven't really connected in a really meaningful way, this might be a little bit challenging trying to get into a sense of connection during a time like this. Trust takes a lifetime to build, and it's not something that happens overnight. In Brene Brown's book, Daring Greatly, she talks about trust and vulnerability and how it is connected. And she actually gives a really good analogy on trust. It was something that her daughter had experienced in school. It was the idea that the teacher had a marble jar. And at the beginning of the year, she put a bunch of marbles in the marble jar and said that she would continue to add to it if she saw behavior that was positive, if people were treating each other well. And then she would remove some of the marbles from the jar if people were acting in ways that were not kind to each other. And what I found interesting about it was she had the analogy that trust is the same way, that you have the marble jar, and as you have people around you and you have these trusting experiences with them, you keep adding marbles to that jar. You add that trust. You add these things that are making you feel a real sense of connection with this person, a sense of vulnerability. And the times where you may be disappointed or things don't go that well, you are pulling marbles out of that same jar. And that over time, we actually should be in a lot of relationships seeing those marble jars get fuller and fuller as we learn to trust people and as they learn to trust us. I thought it was a really great analogy because it's the idea that trust is built one marble at a time. It's not something that happens instantaneously, and it's something that we need to be vulnerable with, but we also need to have wisdom with. So what things erode trust? Often there's the big betrayals that erode trust, those betrayals that are so significant and are so traumatic that there is no way of coming back from it. There's no way of coming back from the place where you trusted that person to where you are now. In that case, the marble jar has been smashed and there is no going back. Brene Brown talks about a different erosion of trust, and she talks about the erosion of disengagement. And that was a really interesting one for me, the idea that disengagement can affect our relationships in such a way that not only is there erosion of trust, there can be so much mistrust. The idea that we trust people and just through their own indifference, for not being able to be seen by them, by maybe through their actions or their words, they have shown that they cannot be trustworthy. The hard thing with that is with every bit of that eroding trust, that disinterest, that lack of kindness, maybe the lip service of saying, oh, I really care about you, but then not actually showing it through with actions. That is a lot deeper erosion of trust. It brings us to a place where we sometimes experience shame. What's wrong with me? Why am I not lovable? And realizing that these are reactions that come from that place of feeling vulnerable with someone and that trust being eroded. And how important it is for us at this time to show that love to others, to build that trust, to get into good habits with our relationships so that we do have that trust, because I really believe that it's our lifeblood. Without that trust, without that connection with the people that are closest to us, I don't think there's anything that can be more important than that. The trap of disconnection is a very easy trap to fall into. It's so simple when things are busy to be putting out fires, dealing with your list, dealing with the thing that is coming to your attention the most, and missing out on the things that are the most important and those connections that are the most important. And I think it's realizing that we need to really prioritize and be really mindful about what we are going to spend our emotional energy on. Are we going to help those relationships that mean the most to us and the people that need us the most? Are we giving that mental energy and that mental time to people or causes that maybe don't deserve it? The thing with disconnection is once you start down that road of disconnection, the harder it is to find a way to reconnect again. It takes so much more work and so much more time, and sometimes it can't ever really be fixed. So it's really important that we see these things, that we acknowledge the fact that disconnection can be such a powerfully negative thing in our lives, and make sure that we don't allow that to seep in. So what does disconnection have to do with COVID-19? If we don't have trust and connection during this time, it can really have our relationships fall apart, because there is enough stress and enough other things going on that it actually can be a really negative thing for our lives. I was reading some articles today about how now that China have started to let people out of their homes and life is getting back to normal, they've seen a skyrocketing rates of divorce in their country. And there's a few different theories on that, but part of it is when you are in a small space with people that maybe you haven't spent a lot of time with, and if you have that disconnection, it can lead to realizing that you are maybe in a more broken relationship than you realize. I think it's really important that we are aware of that during this time, that we can learn from what's going on in China and hopefully be able to do what we need to do to be able to protect these relationships so you never have to get to that point. So how do we build trust and not end up as a statistic? How do we make sure that we don't fall into bad habits and have a relationship that isn't as healthy as it could be? One thing we can do to help ourselves is by becoming active listeners. This is something I had to deal with in my own life a few years ago, where I realized I wasn't as good at listening as I thought I was. Active listening requires us to be focused on the person who is talking and not on our response to things or on what we are doing at the same time. Let's be honest, most of us can't really multitask and active listen. We either are focusing on the thing that we are doing or we're focusing on the person we're talking to. Active listening requires us to slow down. It is actually listening to those person's words to hear what they're really trying to say. And if you really are active listening, you're not coming up with your response. You're not thinking about what you're going to say next. Instead, you are listening to what they have to say. It's going to actually require you to pause and process what they're saying and actually say what you think in response to that, because you don't already have a preconceived idea of what they're going to say. I think a lot about the idea of, am I talking at people or am I talking with people? I've been talked at a lot in the last few years, and it's funny because you start realizing how little people are truly listening to you. They want you to stop talking so that they can talk. And it's not a great thing to have to deal with, but I think it's also realizing that with the pace of our society, it's not always easy for people. One thing that I have started to do to become an active listener is to actually drop what I'm doing, look at the person I'm talking to, make eye contact, and listen. And the funny thing is, if you actually are making eye contact with the person, you will be surprised how much better you hear them and how you actually listen to what they're saying. And I started learning a lot about active listening when I was working in the workplace, because I was working in an office where people were horrible about listening. They would prefer to talk for hours, but trying to get them to listen was very, very hard. And so it was one of those things that I had to start learning some skills to figure out how I was going to active listen and how I was going to try to engage active listening with others so that we could actually get something accomplished instead of everyone talking past each other. It's important to find activities that build connection. As COVID-19 is getting a little bit more serious here in Alberta, they've had to close the national and the provincial parks to make sure that people do proper social distancing. People weren't, so they've had to kind of go to greater extremes to make sure that people are respecting the fact that we're trying not to spread this virus. So what do you do when you have so much time inside? I think there are a lot of online resources that you can use and things that you can maybe do together as a family or as a couple or even as an individual. On this website alone, Hop Along Studio, there are a lot of creative foundation videos and other creative ideas to help you be able to use this time wisely, to be able to find some inspiration so that you can learn some new art techniques. As well, I've been using our library system here in Calgary. They have a really large online library and some really great resources. So there's movies and books and music that you can listen to. And so there's no reason you can't find some great online resources to help you through this time. It is important to have connection during this time, but another side of that is also giving each other some space. As my husband's had to start working from home, we've had to really talk things through and communicate well about what he requires in a day and what I require in a day. Because I'm videoing, I'm blogging, I am doing all sorts of creative things, and he needs time and space to be able to focus on his work, to be able to take conference calls, to be able to do online meetings. And so thankfully we're in a place where we have multiple rooms in the house that I can work in and he can work in, so that we can stay out of each other's space when we need to, so that he's able to do what he needs to do in a confidential manner and I'm able to do what I need to do. It has taken some juggling and figuring out what each other need, and part of that has been through the good communication, where we ask each other at the beginning of the day, like, what's your plan for the day? What are you doing? So that we are able to really support each other in the tasks that we both need to get done, instead of having it to be an area of contention. By giving time and space, I really believe that we can really show love to each other through this. Both my husband and I are introverts, so for both of us, we need some time alone to be able to recharge, and that's a really important thing. So by being able to give each other the space to not just do work, but be able to have a little bit of alone time, to be able to recharge, when we connect again, it's always so much better. And it's something to be said about showing a servant attitude towards your spouse or your partner or someone in your family, where if they need that space and time, you can give them that space and time. So instead of them feeling stir crazy in the house that they can't get away from you, or feeling that they're constantly on, by giving them that space just to be, to relax, to recharge and find restoration, it can be such a positive thing in your relationships. And I believe that we can leave this time of pandemic in a place where our relationships are stronger and we are more connected than we've ever been, and we have more trust than we've ever been, if we choose that path. And so my hope for you this week is that you can learn how to find some real connection with others and be able to find ways that you can be a blessing to them during this time. And as we work through this, just that we can become closer to those around us instead of being divided. I hope that you have found this video useful, and if you have, feel free to like it, subscribe to my channel, and click the notifications so you don't miss out on any future videos. I also have my website, hopalongstudio.com, where you can find this article, this video, as well as other creative content to help you through this time. And I hope that you have a really great week, and I will see you next time.